Marcus stood near the locker room entrance, holding his jersey in one hand, his fingers gripping the fabric a little tighter than usual. He had been here before, in moments that felt just as big, but tonight felt different. Not because of the game itself, but because of everything surrounding it. The looks, the whispers, the subtle tension that had followed him since he walked into the building. As he stepped out onto the court for warm-ups, the noise shifted slightly. It didn't stop, but it changed. Some people clapped, others watched quietly, and a few leaned toward each other, speaking just low enough that their words blended into the crowd, but their intentions didn't. "That's him," someone said. "Yeah, I heard about him," another voice replied. Marcus didn't look toward them. He didn't need to. He already knew the tone. On the other side of the court, the opposing team stretched in formation, their movements sharp, their focus locked in. Their coach stood with his arms crossed, watching Marcus more than anyone else. Not in a way that respected skill, but in a way that questioned presence. Marcus dribbled the ball slowly, letting the rhythm steady him. The sound echoed under the bright lights, grounding him in something familiar. Basketball had always been simple for him. Clear rules, clear outcomes. What happened off the court was where things became complicated. A referee walked past, glancing at him briefly before moving on. The look was quick, but Marcus noticed it. He noticed everything. As the teams lined up for introductions, the announcer's voice filled the gym, calling out each player's name with rising energy. When it was Marcus's turn, there was a pause. Not long, just a fraction of a second, but enough to feel. "And Marcus Carter," the announcer said. The reaction was mixed. Some cheers, some silence, some hesitation. Marcus stepped forward anyway. The game started fast, the energy immediate. The ball moved quickly between players, shoes gripping the floor as both teams fought for control. Marcus stayed focused, reading the court, anticipating movement, letting instinct guide him. But early on, something felt off. Every time he touched the ball, the defense tightened more than usual. Not just strategic pressure, but something more aggressive, more personal. Hands reaching, bodies leaning harder, contact just within the edge of what could be called a foul. On one play, he drove toward the basket, only to be pushed slightly off balance midair. The whistle didn't blow. The crowd reacted unevenly, some shouting, others staying quiet. Marcus landed, catching himself before falling. He looked briefly at the referee, who simply gestured for the game to continue. He didn't argue, he just ran back on defense. Because this wasn't new. A few minutes later, he intercepted a pass, moving quickly down the court. The crowd's energy rose as he approached the basket, his steps controlled, his focus locked in. He jumped, releasing the ball smoothly. It went in clean. For a moment, the noise surged, then settled again. The game continued, but the pattern remained. More contact, fewer calls, more pressure directed at him specifically. It wasn't obvious enough to stop the game, but it was consistent enough to feel intentional. At halftime, Marcus walked back to the locker room, his teammates talking around him, some frustrated, others trying to stay positive. The coach spoke quickly, drawing plays on a board, emphasizing adjustments. Marcus sat quietly, listening but not speaking. He didn't need motivation. He needed clarity, and he already had it. The second half began with even more intensity. The score stayed close, each team matching the other point for point. The crowd leaned forward, every possession feeling heavier than the last. Marcus played through it all. The contact, the noise, the pressure. He didn't react outwardly, didn't let frustration show, but inside, he felt the weight of it, not just the game, everything around it. Midway through the fourth quarter, the score was tied. The tension in the gym was almost physical, something you could feel in the air. Every movement slowed slightly, every decision carrying more consequence. Marcus received the ball near the top of the key, the defense closing in immediately. Two players moved toward him, their steps quick, their focus clear. He paused for just a second, then moved, one step to the left, a quick shift to the right, creating just enough space. He drove forward, the defense reacting, trying to cut him off. Another player stepped in, arms raised, body positioned to stop him. Marcus didn't stop. He adjusted mid-motion, releasing the ball just before contact. It hit the backboard, dropped through the net. The crowd erupted, but the moment didn't end there. As Marcus landed, the whistle finally blew. A foul, late, but called. He stood there for a second, the noise around him fading slightly as he processed it. Not the call itself, but the timing. Still, he stepped to the free throw line. One shot. The gym quieted. Marcus took a breath, bouncing the ball once, then again. His eyes stayed on the rim, his focus narrowing until everything else disappeared. He shot, the ball went in, clean. The lead shifted, his team moved ahead. The final minutes played out quickly after that, the opposing team pushing hard but unable to close the gap. The buzzer sounded, and the game ended with Marcus's team ahead. The gym exploded with noise, teammates rushing onto the court, celebrating, shouting, embracing each other. Marcus stood still for a moment, not celebrating, not reacting, just standing. Because for him, the game had been about more than the score. As the crowd began to settle, an announcement came over the speakers. Before we conclude tonight's game, we have a special recognition. The noise softened again, curiosity replacing celebration. A man stepped onto the court, dressed formally, holding a microphone. His presence shifted the atmosphere, bringing a different kind of attention. Tonight, we're honored to have someone in attendance who has been evaluating athletic programs across the state, he said, not just for performance, but for fairness, conduct, and sportsmanship. Marcus looked up slightly. The man continued, and after what we've seen tonight, there's something that needs to be acknowledged. The gym grew quieter. Bias doesn't always show itself loudly, he said. Sometimes it appears in small decisions, in moments that go unnoticed by most, but felt deeply by those experiencing them. A ripple moved through the crowd. The referees shifted slightly where they stood. Coaches exchanged glances. The man turned his attention toward Marcus and the player, who demonstrated not just skill, but composure, resilience, and integrity under that pressure. Is Marcus caught her? Silence, then recognition, not loud, but real. Marcus didn't move forward immediately. He simply stood there, the same way he had all night, calm, steady, unchanged, because he understood something the rest of the room was just beginning to realize. The most important part of the game wasn't the final score. It was everything that happened before the whistle ever blew. The applause that followed was uneven at first, scattered claps rising from different parts of the gym as people processed what had just been said. It wasn't the loud, instant celebration that usually followed a championship moment. It carried hesitation, reflection, and a quiet realization that something deeper than a game had just been exposed. Marcus finally took a step forward, not because he wanted attention, but because standing still any longer would only stretch the moment further. His teammates looked at him differently now, not just as the player who had secured the win, but as someone who had carried something heavier throughout the game without letting it show. The man with the microphone extended his hand slightly, gesturing for Marcus to come closer. As Marcus approached, the noise in the gym faded again, like the entire room was leaning in to hear what would happen next. I'd like to ask you something, the man said, his voice steady but respectful. How did you stay that composed through everything tonight? Marcus looked at him for a moment, then briefly at the crowd, then back again. He didn't rush his answer. He didn't try to perform for the moment. I've been in games like this before, he said calmly. Not just on the court. The words settled slowly. The man nodded. What do you mean by that? Marcus took a small breath. I mean situations where the rules are the same for everyone, but they don't always feel the same when you're in them. The gym remained quiet. Some people shifted in their seats. Others sat completely still. Marcus continued, his tone still even, still controlled. You learn early that reacting to every moment doesn't change how those moments are created, he said, so you focus on what you can control. The man lowered the microphone slightly, listening more than leading now. And what can you control? He asked. Marcus answered without hesitation. How you respond, he said. How you carry yourself. And whether you let someone else's assumption decide your outcome. The weight of that answer moved through the room in a way that was hard to describe but easy to feel, because it wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about something everyone understood, even if they hadn't experienced it the same way. The man nodded slowly. That's powerful, he said. Marcus didn't react to the compliment. He simply stood there, calm as ever. From the sidelines, one of the referees stepped forward slightly, then stopped. He looked like he wanted to say something, but the words didn't come easily. The moment had shifted in a way that made speaking feel heavier than usual. The opposing coach crossed his arms, his expression tighter now, not defensive, but thoughtful. His earlier focus on Marcus had changed into something quieter, something closer to recognition. In the stands, conversations began again, but softer this time. People leaned toward each other, not with excitement, but with reflection. I didn't notice it at first. Someone whispered, yeah, but now it's kind of obvious. Another replied. Marcus heard none of it directly, but he felt the shift. Because it was the same shift he had felt in other places, other rooms, other moments where awareness replaced assumption. The man with the microphone stepped back slightly. Thank you for that, he said. I think everyone here needed to hear it. Marcus gave a small nod. No speech, No celebration, just acknowledgement. The ceremony wrapped up shortly after, the crowd slowly returning to its usual rhythm, though not completely the same as before. The energy had changed, not dramatically, but enough to leave a mark. As players began to leave the court, Marcus walked back toward the locker room, his teammates catching up with him. Man, that was something. One of them said. Marcus glanced at him. It was just a game, he replied. The teammate shook his head. Nah, it was more than that. Marcus didn't argue, because he knew that was true. Inside the locker room, the noise returned, teammates talking, celebrating, replaying moments from the game. But even there, the tone felt slightly different. The excitement was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Respect, not just for the win, but for how it was handled. Marcus sat down quietly, untying his shoes, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't need to relive the game. He had already processed it as it happened. After a few minutes, the coach walked over, stopping in front of him. You handled yourself well out there, he said. Marcus looked up. I played my role, he replied. The coach nodded. You did more than that. Marcus didn't respond, because he didn't see it that way. To him, it wasn't about doing more. It was about doing what was necessary. The coach hesitated, then added, not everyone could have stayed that calm. Marcus gave a small shrug. You get used to it. That answer stayed with the coach longer than anything else. Because getting used to something like that wasn't something anyone should have to do. But it was reality. Marcus finished packing his bag and stood up, slinging it over his shoulder. As he walked toward the exit, the noise of the locker room faded behind him, replaced once again by the quieter sounds of the emptying gym. The stands were clearing out now, people heading toward the exits, their conversations still carrying that same thoughtful tone. As Marcus stepped onto the court one last time, he paused briefly, looking out at the space where everything had unfolded. The lights were still bright, the floors still polished. Nothing had physically changed, but something had shifted. Not just in the game, in the people who watched it. Because sometimes, the most important moments aren't the ones that end with a buzzer. They're the ones that leave something behind. Something people carry with them long after they leave. Marcus turned and walked off the court, his steps steady, his expression unchanged. Because for him, this wasn't the end of a story. It was just another chapter in one he already understood.